Hello you guys, and welcome to today's video. I am actually filming this intro after the video itself because I lost the footage. But that being said, today we're going to be going through 4 mobility drills that I absolutely love. I'm going to walk you through how to do them, give you some variations, some cues, and we're going to keep it hip and ankle for now. So it's going to be lower body for this video, and I'm also going to have an upper body version of it as well. So let's get into it. All right, first one that I want to cover is going to be the shin box. A lot of people also call this the 90-90 stretch. The reason I don't call it 90-90 is that I personally don't always do it at 90 degrees just because it's more comfortable for me. You will see that the more you train, the more you will find what works for your body. There are different positions, different grips, different stances that will work for different people. And for me, sometimes I like to do a slightly lower angle, so a smaller angle than 90-90, but regardless, we're gonna call this the shin box stretch. So how to get into it for the most basic variation of it, you're gonna put your feet at the same level as your hips, and then you're gonna rotate your knees to one side, bringing one knee to the smack middle of your opposite foot. You don't want it stacked on top. You also don't want it misaligned, so to the smack middle. Both knees are ideally on the ground. And here, there are many ways you can do it. So you could try doing it without your hands. You're gonna come and wipe all the way to the other side. I have also heard these being called wipers, which is why it's the wiping motion of the shift. You could also have your hands behind you if needed for a more assisted movement. And essentially the goal, like I said, is at an angle somewhere close to 90 degrees to have both knees on the ground and shift using your hips from side to side. If you've never done this, this here is going to give you plenty to practice. Once you've mastered it, once it's no longer too challenging, what you're gonna do is you're gonna add a hip extension. So hip extension, ideally once again, without your hands, is you're gonna come up onto your knees. Please use a cushioned floor. This is really not ideal, but we're gonna make do. And then you're gonna shift to the other side and same thing. Now you could do this with your hands. Of course, you could help yourself up, but at that point, I suggest just focusing on the shift. Forget about the hip extension for now. Only get to the hip extension when you're comfortable without your hands, right? Because you want to get the most out of the movement. Another variation of what you could do single leg ones. So from your initial position here, you could take one leg and simply bring it to the middle of your opposite leg, back up. Bring it to the middle and back up. Or you could do the other way around. So you could place it slightly closer and just work on the opposite part. It's gonna be a little hard to get your knee all the way to the floor, but regardless, this can be a very good drill to focus on one side at a time. Another thing that I love is from a shin box position here, you're gonna work either on the internal rotation of the hip or the external rotation. So you could have your hands on the ground or not. For this one, I'm not too fussy. Even I sometimes like to do it with the hands down. I find it helps me focus on what I'm really doing instead of trying to keep my balance. So hands down, what you're gonna do for external rotation is you're gonna keep your foot grounded and you're just gonna lift up as far as you can without moving the rest of your body. So we're not doing the full motion here. We're just doing the external rotation and back, and much harder. The internal rotation is the opposite, so you keep your knee down and you lift your foot. You're gonna notice that you're probably not gonna be able to go as high as you do with the external one. It's normal. Something that I actually forgot to mention, I always get the question, is it normal that I creep? So a lot of people tell me this is kind of what happens when they do it. They move forward. I call that creeping, for no good reason really. What I do to avoid that, and this is true for mobility, but it's also true for strength training, for weightlifting, for anything, focus on what you're using, right? So yes, if you're just shifting your legs side to side, for sure you're gonna move because you're not really engaging any muscles or any parts of your body. What I like to do is I will engage my glutes and I will push them down. So as I'm doing it, I'm not only turning to one side, but I'm also actively pushing towards the floor. And that is gonna keep me very rooted in place. There might be a little bit of shift, but nothing major. So try that, hips, glutes engaged, and pushing down towards the floor as you're doing the motion. And then one last variation that I'm gonna leave you with for today is going to be the leg sweep. So there might be a lot of reasons why you're not able to do pistol squats yet. It could be lack of mobility, so you're not able to go all the way down in your ankles or hip. It could be strength, you're able to go down but you're not able to stand up. It could be stability, you're losing your balance while you're doing it, or it could also be a weak hip flexor, right? So if you have trouble with the portion where you're supposed to keep your leg out, if your leg is cramping, getting tired, or you're simply unable to hold it out, this drill can be something that helps. So what you're gonna do from your shin box position, again, either holding onto the ground or not, you're gonna take the back leg and then sweep it forward until it is close to your opposite knee, and then gently bring it back to position. This is gonna be very hard to do without moving the rest of your body, but that's what you're gonna focus on. Try to have everything else stand still and have the entire movement come from that back hip. Of course, if you do this, please practice equally on both sides. It goes without saying. So this is gonna be it for the shin box. All right, the next one we're gonna go over is deep squats. Now, I know my comments are gonna fill with people who say that they just can't do it because of their body composition. It may be the case, it may not be the case. I'm just gonna go over what works for me, certain tips and tricks if you wanna get better at them. There's always room for improvement. The main thing that you want to focus on is that your heels are down. By the way, I do recommend doing all these exercises either barefoot or in your socks. I'm in a public gym, so it's not too appealing for me. These shoes are not too bad, but for you, if you're at home, if you're in a private gym, try to do them without a shoe. It's going to definitely be better for your ankle mobility progression. So you want your heels to be down. You want your butt to be as close to your calves, to your heels as possible. And then we want to have a neutral back. So no rounding, but also no arching, neutral back. A couple of drills that can help with this. Obviously, just practicing them with a squat rack, walking down with a TRX, with resistance bands, anything you can that you can hold on to while you practice down. Other things that you can do. So we're not gonna talk about the advanced variations. There are so many advanced variations that you can do once you're here, right? You can go for rocks, for rotations here, for full-on ninja jumps. There's a lot that you can do once you're down, but we're gonna talk about how to get down. So the shin boxes that I showed previously can greatly help with your hip mobility. Working on your ankle mobility separately can greatly help with the deep squat. But I'm gonna show you two drills which are super simple, which I think can help with both the mobility and flexibility required for the deep squat. So the first one is gonna be easier. It's just gonna be a butterfly rock, or frog rocks. So feet are gonna be together, big toes together, knees are gonna be apart, hands in front. You're essentially gonna do deep squats on all fours. So you're gonna come and rock your butt to your heels if possible, or as close as possible, and rock forward. So you can see this as the standing motion of the squat and this as the squatting down. So this is gonna be the first thing you practice. Until this is extremely easy. Then what you can do to make it a little bit more challenging is loaded beasts. So now from a push-up position or high plank position, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna bring your butt to your heels or as close as possible and come up. So now we're essentially doing a deep squat, but in a push-up position. These two very simple drills can help once you've worked on the hip and ankle portion. Number 3, lunge rocks. Maybe I should have talked about these first because they're great for ankle mobility. Yes, it is okay for your knee to go over your toes, right? The reason why we learn this so early on is that it's so much easier to teach people to squat properly by telling them keep your knees behind your toes. Otherwise, what you see very often is initiation of the squat at the knees, and it looks something like this. Whereas if I tell you keep your knees behind your toes, you're gonna focus on hinging back instead. So it is a great cue when you're starting out. Once you're far along, once you have good mobility, it is absolutely okay for your knee to go over your toes. I'm not saying put thousands of pounds on you and do it, but for bodyweight exercises, for slightly weighted exercises, anything that has to do with pistol squats, shrimp squats, it is absolutely okay, okay? So from here, what we're gonna do, we're gonna rock forward until your knee goes over your toes. And if you're able to go even further, you're gonna find your positioning. So as far as you can, knee over toe, heel is down. You can have your hands down or not. Hold for a couple of seconds, then we're gonna release and go again, okay? This, a slightly modified version of this, is actually one of my favorite warm-ups. So what I do when I'm warming up, I'll actually go all the way down just to get a very slight stretch in my hamstring, so I'm not hyperextending. I'm really keeping my knee a little bit bent. I get a nice little stretch for a second and rock forward. So I'm gonna make it very dynamic if I'm warming up. If I'm working on my mobility, I'm gonna hold for a couple of seconds here, rock back to release, and so on. Ways that you can make this harder is a kettlebell or a dumbbell can be placed over your knee here. You could go for longer holds, calf raises from this position here, so either with a weight or not. Next up, we're gonna talk about my favorite exercise ever, Cossack Squats. I love them, they make my hips feel amazing. So Cossack Squats, what they're gonna be is from a split stance position here, so your legs as far as possible, you're gonna lower yourself down onto one side. So it's like you're doing a deep squat, but on one leg, the opposite leg is extended out. and turned outwards to allow for more range of motion. And then you can either do low shifts like this, or you can go through the top and down. Naturally, ways to make this harder are going to be with weights or staying low, holding, and so on. But ways to make it easier are going to be side lunges. The main difference is both feet stay down. So it's gonna look something like this. What it does when your foot stays down is it restricts your range of motion, so you're not able to go as low, making it easier. And of course you can practice that. If you wanna throw some balance in there, you can practice the actual stepping out. If you wanna practice your depth, you can practice with your hands down, so maybe shifting from side to side or just touching down and going up. You could also do this with a weight, so touching down the kettlebell instead of your hands, but with your hands, it's gonna require more range of motion. A weight is gonna make it a little bit more challenging because it's heavier. There's tons of things that you can do. And on top of that, you could also work on your flexibility with stretches such as a single leg butterfly stretch, reaching forward, a straddle stretch, reaching forward, an adductor stretch where you're in a half frog position and either reaching to the side or even just staying here, working on that inner thigh. Flexibility can also help a lot with the Cossack squat. All right, you guys, if you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. As always, if you have any recommendations, any requests, things you want to see on this channel, please drop them down in the comments, and have a great day.